So we're going to have another episode of Loaded Questions, Dan. This was kind of fun.
I like my potatoes loaded.
Loaded potatoes. Yeah, I like a loaded potato as well.
We just finished a series on fasting, and Dan's sitting here thinking about loaded potatoes.
I don't. Here's the thing, though. I think your loaded potatoes are going to look different than my loaded potato.
I guarantee you they will.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Let's talk about that. What would your loaded potatoes
be?
So my loaded potato would be there's a queso blanco that my wife makes from cashews. That's amazing.
From cashews.
I promise you.
I would put so with him.
And you know how he does it. He says, my wife makes it and it's amazing. So if you say anything
I don't go with that.
Negative on
I don't know his wife.
I'm not that stupid.
I don't care.
Okay,
I don't know.
It is amazing.
I'm gonna bring. I'm telling you right now. I'm telling you right now. No, you didn't have this one. I'm bringing in queso blanco for you guys. No, that was another queso. I'm bringing in queso blanco. That's what I'm saying. Queso blanco.
Which is just white queso.
It's just white queso. And then I put black beans, pico, tortilla chips.
I don't even like my food to touch. And you're putting it all in the sink.
like a Mexican loaded potato. That's what I'm trying to say. Okay. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Okay. I like a Mexican with crunched up tortilla chips on top of it. Oh, it's so good.
Wait, this is the baked potato? You're putting all kinds of chips.
I'm putting Mexican. I'm having a Mexican loaded
I've
potato.
always said he's a closet
guacamole.
communist.
Guacamole on that.
Not normal, right?
A guacamole on a potato?
I just said
you are so twisted.
No, I promise you this.
Pastor?
I promise you this. People are going to come after they hear this. People are going to come up to me and you on a Sunday morning at our church, and they're going to say,
so weird.
"No, they're going to say Ben is right."
The guacamole on potatoes.
Well, I'm not saying purely guacamole, but I'm just saying if there's queso and guacamole and salsa and black beans and tortilla chips,
I like all that, but without the potato.
It's phenomenal.
Give them something to compare to, though.
Right, so
what would your loaded potato be?
Ponderosa. Okay. Sour cream, onions, cheese.
You say that like
you're
it's a
saying
bad
everyone's going to say you're right. We'll see.
Go ahead, Dan.
Well, first of all, this is weird, and I will admit to it. And I learned this years ago when I worked at a steakhouse like a Ponderosa. It wasn't a Ponderosa.
Yeah.
But I like my potatoes almost cold. Baked potatoes almost cold.
What?
Yes.
Oh, okay. How dare you?
I actually do like a cold baked potato.
How dare you make fun of me when you say something that is...
By the time I got done with my shift, it was 10 o'clock at night, and that's when we would eat. And so the only potatoes we had to eat were the leftover potatoes of the day, and we had turned the heater off 30 minutes before the close of the restaurant. So by the time I got them, they were little more than room temperature.
There's a reason why you were okay with this, but it doesn't mean it should be. Like food all over England is terrible because they got used to not using seasoning in World War II. But that doesn't mean that they shouldn't.
I was going to say this is
seasoning their food.
Who wants to eat a potato so hot it gives you blisters? But that's how they serve it to you.
I'm not saying it should be hot.
You can hardly even cut it open because it's so hot.
That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
When it arrives at my plate, because I only eat one thing at a time anyway, I cut the potato open. I know how to make them open like a flower because I used to work for them, and I eat it last. Right. That is my dessert because I want it to be cool.
Do you like cold French fries?
No, just the baked potato. Just the baked potato.
This is so odd to me.
This is really weird.
But I said,
everyone's on Ben's side.
Everything I said about,
I can't believe I was on.
But
Dan's
as for
side
toppings, first of all, I'd like bacon.
Of course.
Then I'd like more bacon.
As it should be.
And then finally, I'd like some more bacon.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yes. Cheese, sour cream, chives, salt, pepper, and lots of butter. So yes, it is a Ponderosa one.
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
But
everyone,
lots of bacon.
Come up to Dan and Ben afterward.
That was not the first question.
And cool enough with the butter doesn't actually melt.
That is so weird. That is so weird. Okay.
So I was wrong on so many levels.
I was weird before I told you all that. So
all right, Dan. So you got two. You got two for me. I've got one for you.
Okay. So, what do you believe is the biggest threat to the church of this generation?
I think the biggest threat to the church of this generation is we have become so distracted. We're so overly stimulated with social media, with internet, with work, with everything, that we are not listening to the voice of God. So I think an overstimulation and an over a flooding of voices into our life, and now it's the we have lost touch with the voice of God, and we make no room for God in our daily walk. We make no room for God in our schedules because we have sports on the weekends. We have at the end of the day, we worship ourselves, and therefore anything that stimulates us or satisfies us is ultimate. And therefore, whatever God wants is secondary to what I want. Okay, that's what I think.
Good answer.
What would you say? What would you say?
I would have two answers. On a philosophical level, I would say it's therapeutic moral deism.
Yeah.
On the practical side, maybe more authentic side, it is the complete absence of an unwillingness to sacrifice anything for our faith.
Yeah.
And don't tell me how you sacrifice when you won't get your butt out of bed and come to church on time or at all.
Yeah.
Or when you think you're suffering for Jesus because you have to come back on Sunday night for missions night.
Mm.
I know that sounds harsh, but I wanted it to.
Mm-hmm.
The bottom line is most of us practice our faith out of convenience, not conviction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think until we learn to suffer again, that it is truly indicative of us, as it was in Revelation chapter 2, that we've lost our first love.
Yeah.
Because you'll sacrifice for what you really love.
Yeah.
And we do every day.
Mm.
We sacrifice church so that we can play golf or go out on our boat or to go to Disney World.
Mm.
But when was the last time we did the opposite, that we sacrificed golf or going out on our boat or Disney World because we're called to gather together as a family?
Yeah.
And I think that ought to be very convicting. And I think it's one of the greatest threats to the modern church, at least in the United States. Because when I go to the mission field, I literally will worship with people who have walked 2 to 3 hours to get to the assembly. And if we had a 90-minute church service, they would be ticked off. They have 90 minutes of worship.
Yeah.
And then they preach, and then they worship some more. Then they preach and give testimonies. And they're 3, 4, 5 hour long services. Then they walk 3 hours back home. And I know people say, well, this isn't Africa or whatever. But let me ask you this question. If we won't get in our air-conditioned cars and drive 15 minutes to church, or we make a decision on going to church because it's 5 minutes closer,
or it's raining.
Yeah, or it's raining. What is the relative comparison to the genuineness of our faith? I think it has to call it into question. So,
okay, so can I ask you a question?
This took a big turn from what do we like on our potatoes?
Now that everyone feels
thankfully.
guilty. Now that everyone feels guilty. Dan, you're so right. Oh. All right, let me ask you a question. Do you think it's ever okay to miss church for something fun? Because I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. So I grew up in a home where we literally did not go places on Sunday.
Yeah.
If we were on vacation, we still went to church.
Yeah.
Not just Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Sunday morning and Sunday night.
Yeah.
One of the first, and this is very legalistic, and I'm not suggesting this is the only way you can live. And I don't live this way. I just want to. But I mean, literally the first time that we missed a church service, we still had a church service
in our living room.
In our hotel room.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know that is necessarily bad. I will say this. If it's a pattern,
okay,
then it's a problem.
I like that. I like that answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've been on cruise ships that, don't get back till Sunday at noon or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But I will tell you this, I miss it. I look, and if now that we've got it streaming, I was in Bulgaria the other day watching the church service. Anytime I can watch a church service, I want to be connected to our body. I want to know what's going on. Yeah. You and I both do this. If we miss a church service, what do you always do to me?
I text you at 1:00.
Exactly. How did it go? And I do often the same thing to you.
Yeah.
Because we care. It's not just because it's our job.
No.
This is we love the body.
I genuinely, when I miss, when I'm not here, it's not, there is a work, because we are pastors, there's a responsibility. There's a responsibility to it. At the same time, there is a genuine pleasure I get from being here.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel like work to me.
Right.
It feels like there's nowhere else in the world I'd rather be.
It's like missing Sunday lunch with your family.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I just want to ask, because I think there is a legalism to that extreme that you got to be mindful of. But I do think what you're saying is if it's a pattern, it's a problem. I like that saying. I think that's really good.
And I think the other thing that we ought to be thoughtful. We ought to be thoughtful about the choices. Every choice we make ought to involve, because there is thought whether we're conscious of it or not. We're always going to do what we want to do.
Yeah.
That's just in our human nature. We're always going to do what is really important to us. People say, I don't have enough time. Oh, you've got exactly as much time as everybody else. It's how you spend your time.
People that give the excuse I don't have the time that's the dumbest excuse. It's the most worthless excuse that anyone could ever come up with, because everyone has enough time.
Exactly.
So, all right. Here's my question. And I didn't prep you for this. This is the rule. No prepping.
No prepping.
So when I ask you this question, you may not know what I'm asking you, and I'm not trying to stump you. I'm just there is a thing called gentle parenting that's out right now. You familiar with it? What do you think of gentle parenting?
I think it's an overreaction to harsh parenting.
Explain. Tell me more.
I spanked my children too much.
I did too.
Yeah. I mean, as a father, and my kids will tell you that I didn't, but I did believe I did. I believe that the boomer generation relied on corporal punishment excessively, and we spiritualized it in the process.
Wow.
I can remember revival preachers coming to my little country church, and there'd be one night when he would talk on parenting, and I always dreaded that night because there would be a significant uptick in, I almost said the beatings would, and I don't want it to be called, my parents did not beat us.
Right.
They beat, or they spanked the tar out of us a few times, but there was always an uptick in corporal punishment that followed that, because they would pull out the proverbial verses.
Spare the rod, spoil the child.
Which is not even a proverb that we turned it into scripture, right?
Wait.
The blueness of the...
What does that mean? What?
Whatever
you just said about that proverb that we turned into a proverb, whatever the thing about spoil the rod, spoil the child. Whatever.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't specifically say spare the rod, spoil the child.
What does it say? Because that was what I was grown up being taught from my church. What does it say?
It talks about using the rod of correction. It talks about the blueness of the wounds. But again, proverbs are truisms. They're not commands. And when we turn a truism into a command, we pervert it, and we turn them into promises often.
But it does talk about blueness of wounds?
It does, yes. There's a verse that talks about the blueness of the wounds will drive wickedness. I can't remember the exact.
So this might be too much of a modern mindset in my head, but I'm going to ask you, it feels to me like as soon as you get past that point, isn't the line of abuse behind wounds being blue?
The modern definition is not even blue. It's red. When I, as a school principal, years...
I'm not asking the legal definition, how we should think about abuse, however you would define actual abuse.
I'm not going to go there simply because I don't want to stir unnecessary controversy, and I don't want to speak as necessarily an authority who has worked it all out in my own head. Yeah. I'm not against corporal punishment. I think a good swat on behind is necessary to catch the attention of certain children at certain stages in their life. Right. But if you think beating your kid with a stick or a belt or whatever consistently for every child is going to produce positive results, I don't think you understand anthropology. I don't think you understand human nature.
But what you're saying is there was an abuse, and now the pendulum has swung.
Yeah, and so now we're in
gentle parenting, which is
basically letting the child rule.
Yeah.
And so educationally, this was a thing for years under the Montessori method. Yeah. The Montessori method was children should not be subject to schedule, order, rigidity. Montessori thinking moved chairs out of rows, did cluster learning, got rid of, used pods, and there's all different kinds of techniques. And this is back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, when I was learning my educational theories and so forth. Then there was a reaction to that, which was back to basics. So kids in rows, alphabetized, stand to address your teacher. Again, you got to always watch for these pendulum swings. Yeah. Some kids do learn effectively in groups and without
structure.
Without as much structure. But you always have to have a plan.
True.
Yeah. And so gentle parenting puts the child in control. The problem is if a child never learns to work under authority and within structure, we set them up for great problems in adulthood.
Yeah.
Now, eventually they'll learn it themselves because you don't get to drive without structure and authority. There's a thing, it'll eventually come to you, or you'll end up in prison or addicted or something else. Structure and authority are good. They're gifts from God.
And consequences.
And consequences.
Yeah. I mean, when you're part of parenting is teaching your kids there are rules in life.
Yeah.
And when you break the rules, there are bad consequences to your life.
Yeah.
Okay. So I think that one of the things that I think it's important for people that have gone down the road of gentle parenting. My concern is we have demonized authority.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's a difference between authoritarian and authority.
Well, there's a difference between authoritarianism and authoritativeness.
Yeah. But that's my point. Is there's the authority, good authority is really important and is necessary. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because I always used to say this when I had my Sunday school teachers, when I was a youth pastor, we did training, and every year, when the beginning of the year, I would teach them. I would say, there will be someone in charge of your classroom. You just have to decide if it's you.
Yeah, that was one of my first teaching lectures of the year.
That's great.
Every year with my teachers,
there will be an authority in your classroom
and in your home.
You just have to decide if it's going to be you or not.
Yeah.
And so, but authority is not bad. But I think it's almost like we've demonized authority in such a way that's like, I don't want, like power is bad. Right. Power is evil.
Right. Raising your voice is not an abuse of authority. Demanding obedience is not an abuse. And by the way, there's this concept going around that I don't have to obey authority unless I agree with them. Oh no. I don't agree with every ticket I've gotten.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is I deserved every ticket I've gotten and a few that I didn't. If that becomes the basis, chaos is the consequence.
That's right.
And I see it spill into the church. Well, I don't like what the pastor said. I don't like what the pastor did, so I'm going to find another church. Well, if you do that, you're going to change churches about every 3 months. And the reality is sometimes you're going to disagree with authority. Now, are there times when you disobey authority? Yes, when it violates truth.
Yeah.
And every opinion we have and every preference we have is not a truth. It's not my truth or your truth.
Yeah.
It's an opinion. It's a preference. But truth comes outside of the individual person, whether they're in authority or not. And that's why the loss of the truth definitions in our culture, where we are now changing truth definitions to be a matter of opinion, you can have your truth and I can have my truth, is absolutely catastrophic for our ability to discern, for our ability to advance. And it's going to create bedlam. And you see it on college campuses going on right now. Yeah. You're going to see huge consequences for that. There has to be order. There has to be structure. It all begins with God, who holds all authority. When we die, we give up every bit of authority we have. Mm-hmm. So when you see it flowing from him, now again, you can take that and abuse it, which, in parenting, it happened in the Gothard movement, in the shiny happy people movement, and all those. So one of the important, not everything works with every child. And I teach this at Liberty University in my family discipleship course. And the first thing that comes out on the first week is this: there are no silver bullets and there is no secret sauce. There is no magic formula for being able to get your kids to follow their faith generationally.
Yeah. Because some kids, I think as parents, you could say, you could look funny at your one kid and they'll just break down weeping. And then some kid you could spank 3 times and be like, what else do you got?
Yeah. Is that the best you can do? I literally had that in my own home. I could, my kids, we used a wooden spoon, and if I pulled the wooden spoon out of the, I used to think this was a party trick. I'd pull the wooden spoon out and I'd ask my kids, what is this? And they'd say, a paddle. They never called it a wooden spoon. To this day, if I walk over to the cupboard and pull out a wooden spoon, my 36-year-old child flinches, but we've got to be smarter than formulas. And so, you get a half a dozen 20-something influencers telling you about gentle parenting. And the reality, I was them. We didn't have influencers then, but I traveled the country in my late 20s and early 30s with seminars like Raising Beaver Cleaver Kids in a Bart Simpson World.
Yeah.
Because Bart was hot in those days. Eventually became Raising Beaver Cleaver Kids in a Beavis and Butthead world because they came along. Yeah. I had 20 ways to be, to make sure your kids will turn out on your team. These were the literal names. And I made thousands of dollars traveling to hundreds of places and giving these lectures until my kids turned about 14, and I've never done them since.
Wow.
Because I realized It doesn't work. It doesn't work.
There are no
It works
formulas.
for some kids, but it doesn't work for every kid.
But good for you for recognizing that this thing's not working and stop doing the thing, because there are a lot of others that just kept on giving those lectures.
Yeah. And do we need ideas? We need to swap ideas. We need that. This works for me. Well, does this work for you? But it's the same thing like dieting. A diet doesn't work for one person to the next, or finishing your degree, or how you navigate your marriage. And that's where daily we've got to be humble before the Lord, knowledgeable of his scripture, seeking counsel from godly others, and just do our best from day to day in the fullness of the Spirit that we walk in.
Yeah. Gentleness is good.
Yeah.
But grace without truth can be dangerous.
Grace without truth can be dangerous, and truth without grace can be dangerous.
And I think that's what we're saying is parenting is you have to have both, fullness of both, not just half and half, but fullness, 100%, 100%. Okay. I think we're out of time. Did you have one?
Holy moly!
Do you have one more thing I can do in a couple minutes? Do you have one more question?
I'm going to save it for our next episode because it's a big one. I can't believe we went through 15 minutes or 21 minutes.
Well, you talked a long time. Well, we did talk about
every once in a while. I do get to.
We talked about baked potatoes for 5 minutes.
That is true. It was 5 minutes.
So, and now everybody is going to their nearest Golden Corral. You know what? That's what they should have. They should have a Golden Corral baked potato fountain. You know, like they do with the chocolate fountain, only with cheese.
Just send people to Chick-fil-A so they can have some good fries.
Yeah.
Come on.
Oh, no. See, you lost me there because I'm not a big fan of the waffle fry.
Really?
Oh.
You will eat cold baked potatoes with cold butter inside of them.
I can't do this podcast anymore.
I love Fresh Markets because they cook them in beef tallow and they're real potatoes and they're thin. I love thin fries. And on that,
I'm so sorry you had to hear that.
I don't know what to say.
I'm so sorry you had to hear that.
I don't know.
Can we edit that part out?
We need to preserve. I don't think we should.
We need to preserve Dan's
Josh,
reputation.
Seriously, look at him and look at me, and who do you think is the better expert on food?
Ben, clearly.
Come on, Dan.
If expert includes like things like what ought we eat and like what's healthy, then Ben. If you asking who has the most experience eating, if you ask who's the expert,
you're fired. That's
if the expert on the phenomenology of eating is you, Dan. But
look, we've already done podcasts on fasting and gluttony.
It's true. People think this podcast is only about food. Okay.
Take us out.
This has been another episode on Life Talks, getting to the real heart of issues here in life. I hope this has been a beneficial conversation for you, and that's what we love to do. If you have questions, insights, ideas for podcast episodes, send it to lifetalks@lifecharlotte.com. Of course, please share these episodes with your friends and family. And we love reviews because when you review more,
positive reviews. We
love positive reviews. It gets our podcast out there more. So please leave a positive review. 5-star reviews are always helpful. Thanks again for joining us on Life Talks. We'll talk to you next time.